Hi and welcome back to Comedy Recapped. Today we'll be examining 2008's The Hottie and the Naughty. Beware, spoilers ahead. We start off in grade school as we watch a boy, Nate, set his eyes on Christabel for the first time, and he knew that he had fallen in love. He goes home and creates a whole declaration of love for her, planning to give it to her on Valentine's Day. Then, we cut ahead 20 years in the future to find Nate singing a rather interesting song to a woman named Jane, who then takes the guitar and smacks him across the head with it. She then takes the time to tell him about how much she doesn't like how he treats her, and she takes her drawer with her as she runs outside. Nate chases after her, but she ends up just running him over before telling him that she's loved him for years. She knows that he doesn't love her back, and she knows that he'll never be able to give her that. When we go back to grade school times, we see that Christabel had been given all sorts of Valentines, but her friend ended up not having any. In the present day, Nate knows now that no other woman will make him happy, and he heads to Los Angeles to talk to Arno about finding his long-lost Christabel. Arno assures him that he has the info he needs to get to Christabel, and he tells him that he'll have to make her ugly best friend, June, happy in order to get to Christabel. Once Nate says nothing will stand in his way, Arno tells him Christabel's every move, and he goes to the beach to get ready for Christabel's morning jog. It turns out that there is a whole group of guys that are there for the same reason. But when he sees her jog by, his breath is taken away. He follows after her, and after knocking her down, she ends up remembering exactly who he is. When they sit down to catch up, he tells her that he's a personal trainer, and she invites him to her gym later that day. She tells him that June will be there as well. Later that day, Nate shows up just in time for the yoga class, and he finally gets to see June for the first time since first grade. After an awkward conversation about June's body hair removal, they go ahead with their yoga class, and Nate deals with the difference between Christabel's backside and June's. Once that's done, Nate sits down with Christabel and he tries to invite her out to dinner. Christabel tells him that she had made a promise to herself not to date anyone else until June as someone special in her life. When Nate gets back to Arno's house, he assures him that he's going to figure out something for June. Later, Nate meets up with Christabel at the park, and he tells her that he's been thinking about a solution for June. He tells her that he has the perfect guy for June, and Christabel tells him that a sort of double date could be worked out if all goes well. So Nate posts a paper asking for people to get paid to go out for medical experimentation. After explaining things, Christabel and June head to a waterside restaurant to meet with Nate and a man named Cole who responded to the flyer. But June gets really nervous when the guys pop up. When Cole sees June, he tries to back out of the deal, but Nate triples his offer. They go to the boat for their trip, and when the captain sees June, he decides not to go aboard. So the four of them end up just sitting on the boat drinking, and Nate really tries to salvage the date. Nate tries to bring up his dream vacation, and it is actually the same one as June. They all decided to go on the beach to enjoy some of the sun, but when June's infected toenail flies into Cole's mouth, he's had just about enough of this date and jumps into the ocean. When they all get back to the room, Nate and Christabel try to cheer up June, but that doesn't work out well. Later, Christabel talks to Nate about her promise for June, but she also admits that she's becoming attracted to him through the process. She opens up about how she has thought about him quite a few times over the years, but she can't abandon June in the process. After hearing this, Nate talks about how he thinks he can help June, and he tells her that he has a plan. Next, we find Cole in Arno's kitchen, and they are hooking him up to an electrical device for experimentation. They test Cole by trying to condition him to be attracted to June. They even try to hypnotize him. But this actually seems to work. He is hypnotized to think that June is a space woman until he hears the phrase, "I love little people mimes." The four of them go on a date on the boardwalk, and there actually is a little person mime performing for everyone. Sure enough, the magic phrase is said aloud, and Cole comes back to reality. He is terrified, and he bolts immediately. Nate takes Christabel and June to see the mime, but when he makes fun of June, a man named Johan pops out of the crowd and stands up for June. Johan takes them all back to his place where he butters up June and he brings up all sorts of impressive stuff he's done. When Nate gets back to Arno's to tell him about Johan, Arno tells him that Johan is just trying to butter up June so that he can actually get to Christabel. Arno tells Nate that if he's going to get Christabel, he's gonna have to lie. When the four of them go on a hike the next day, Nate ends up getting stuck with June. But when he finds out that Johan flies, Nate decides that he's a pilot as well for the moment. He gets caught in his flying dream, and Johan almost takes his shirt off. After Nate tackles him, he rushes up to the car to call Arno to figure out what he could say to make himself sound better, and he comes up with the best thing possible. The two couples head to a restaurant where Nate pulls out his guitar and Johan immediately grabs it to play his own song. Everyone ends up getting captivated by his songs, and Nate realizes that he might be out of his league here. Once he's done, the whole audience applauds, and Johan hands Nate his guitar back. That evening, the four of them head to the club, and Nate checks in with June. When a banger song comes on, Johan ends up taking Christabel out onto the dance floor, and Nate dances with June for a moment. It starts off as a joke, but the two of them end up having some chemistry after all. When Nate sees Johan unbutton his shirt, he rushes out onto the dance floor, and he ends up tackling Christabel by accident. When Christabel steps outside to talk to Nate about his behavior, she points out that he did everything wrong in the end, and things are over between them. Naturally, Nate goes back to Arno's house to eat his feelings away on his couch, but Arno isn't standing by and watching this. Arno quotes Flashdance to try and motivate Nate, and he tells him that she'll meet him at 5 o'clock. Nate goes there to wait for her, but when he is greeted by June, he is absolutely surprised to find her completely transformed. June is completely changed by her transformation, and the two of them go for a walk on the beach. When they're done with their walk, they head back to June's place, and they share some dessert. Nate asks her what's going on with Johan, but she doesn't seem too keen on the topic. Eventually, Nate asks her if his mission to get with Christabel is pointless, but she tells him that she's going to tell her to give him another chance. June seems really upset about him asking though. She tells him that there is a costume party coming up and she wants him to be himself. When June talks about how no one will want to be with her since she's never been kissed, Nate decides to lay one on her, but things go downhill after he tells her that he doesn't know why he did that. After hearing that, June tells him just to go. Nate shows up for the costume party and he immediately spots Johan. Johan comes over and sweeps June up, and Christabel pops up a little tipsy. After pouring wine all over her costume wedding dress, June comes back over and takes Christabel away for a moment. Once Nate is already done with Johan, he hears about how Johan likes the makeover girls because they are way more grateful. And he says that June is almost perfect. After hearing that, Johan plans to reward June that night. Nate tries to take him out. Needless to say, Nate doesn't accomplish this, but June has her words with Nate after the party is over. She tells him that this was her one grain of happiness and he shouldn't be happy that she talked to Christabel for him. June decides that she wants to spend her night with Johan, and Christabel takes Nate upstairs to reward him for helping June through everything. She takes him to her lingerie closet and she has him pick out which one he likes the most. Meanwhile, June is making out with Johan on the couch downstairs. While Nate looks for candles to set the mood, he finds the Valentine he made for Christabel back in the first grade. But he suddenly remembers that he changed it to be for June back then. He goes into Christabel's room to find her waiting for him on the bed, but he has a heart-to-heart with her about why she's picking him. She said that she thought it was a magical chance, but Nate points out that he's always wanted her. After he tells her that he thinks he gave the right girl the right Valentine, Christabel tells him to go get June before things go too far. When Nate gets to Johan's house, he finds that June ended up leaving, and he heads out to find her. Nate goes all the way to the boardwalk and he finds June sitting by herself. He runs right up to her and he tells her that he's in love with her and wants to be with her. After hearing this, the two of them kiss and everything works out. This is a classic Beauty and the Beast tale that warms the heart but also makes you laugh throughout. And that wraps up this recap. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this recap, please subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss a single video.